Home improvement projects don't have to be a pain in the rear end. In fact, they can be a lot of fun if you get the right contractor or work with the right company. So, I've started a podcast to try to introduce people in the Lowcountry to really good builders, really good contractors, really good people in the home improvement space so that you can make good decisions and have one of those good experiences. My name is Richard Barron. I'm the owner of HHI Windows and Doors, and the podcast is called Improving Home Improvement. Today you'll meet my first guest, Cameron Hackett, who's a great builder here in the Lowcountry, also a member of the Builders Board for the Home Builders Association here. So enjoy the podcast and look forward to having you for many more. Take care. Okay, welcome to Improving Home Improvement, where we tackle everything about owning a home in the Lowcountry. I'm Richard Barron of HHI Windows and Doors, and I'm your host. Really excited to have Cameron Hackett with us today. Cameron is the president of Hackett Homes and Construction. He's also a builder director with the Hilton Head Area Home Builders Association. Welcome, Cameron.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And, when I was thinking about getting this podcast started, you immediately came to mind as who I wanted for my first guest because you were so gracious and welcoming. That may have been your role with the HBA. That may have just been your natural tendency, but I really appreciate you reaching out to me and being so hospitable and kind of, giving me a little bit of insight into some of the things that are going on in the Lowcountry. And all that experience made you the perfect first guest. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to Beaufort County and maybe, how you got into construction altogether.
Sure. The story of how I came to Beaufort County, that is certainly, it's certainly a long one. So we'll try to keep it kind of short, but to keep it, to kind of start where it all, pick up where it started, graduated from Citadel in 2015. It wasn't long before graduation, I was realizing my path of becoming a police officer wasn't really going to be the path for me. And so I called my dad up. My dad said, hey, well, my dad, by the way, works for an HVAC contractor. He told me builders are hiring. So I sent out applications to just about every single one I could find when I Googled them. And at the time, I did not have any idea what I was about to step into. I really, truly was about as green gets. But David Weekly Home called me back almost immediately, and they brought me on as an intern initially, and through that experience they felt comfortable hiring me. So shortly after I graduated, they did hire me full time. I started as a builder. That was their title, and really the best way I can put it is they threw me to the wolves. And at some point in this business, that's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah,
that experience taught me so much, especially in those early years, that at the time I look back on it, I was really frustrated. I was like, why is this why does this seem to be happening to me? And, I can't really get ahead. No decision you make is ever the right one.
Right.
But as it progressed, you start making the right decisions, and you start realizing some of these different strategies that you can take to, placate a customer if they're upset, or, and make the build process better. And I think that was what led to a lot of my early successes. I didn't have the bad habits, so to speak. And I didn't have this, these stereotypes about the different aspects of the build and, what was good and what was bad. So I kind of had a unique outlook on that. And with that, we made a lot of, positive changes to how, we did. I'm not going to say that we made, company-wide changes by any means. I wasn't that influential, but we did make some things we did differently. And, it really started leading to a lot of success for the company. By the time I left, I was their senior builder. And, the only reason I wanted to leave, I wanted the next step of my career. I was looking to be a project manager. That was their title, run builders rather than running subs. So I got an opportunity to come here to Bluffton to work with a local production builder. And it was, when I got the phone call, I thought it was an opportunity of a lifetime. My wife, she was only weeks away from giving birth to my son. We had just bought a home in Charleston, and, things were really starting to come together down there. And here I am walking in the house one day, hey dear, we're moving to Bluffton, and if looks could kill, I'd probably be dead in that moment. She was certainly surprised to hear it, but she knew how driven and how much I wanted one of these, I was waiting for one of these opportunities, and it came along. So that happened. We moved here. I was driving back and forth 2 hours a day, or 2 hours each way for about a month. So 4 hours a day I was traveling, trying to step into this new role as an area manager with, like I said, with a local production builder. And things, we started to drift apart. I guess we'll leave it at that with our vision of how we wanted to, how, our outlook on building homes were. Coming from David Weekling Homes, I had this very, customer driven mindset of turning around a quality product and, delivering a level of service to my clients that other production and builders in the area certainly just didn't offer. And that's always been kind of what set me apart. And that's what set David Weekling Homes apart as well as a builder. So, long story short, I started to realize maybe this wasn't for me. Maybe I needed to find something else. And April Fool's Day of 2022, I decided to take the leap, so to speak. And we dove right into the deep end. Came home one day and told my wife, "Hey, dear, we're starting a business."
That's great.
Yeah, she got another one of those looks, but I think that she would follow me into the gates of hell if I asked her to. And the success that we've had, it simply would not be possible without her. That's kind of how it all started. Throughout that experience, we could probably write a book of, what to do and what not to do, but it has certainly helped in building my business. So.
No doubt that experiential learning is a big part of this process, and that's actually part of this podcast, is that our experiences are going to help people not make those same mistakes.
Right.
Whether it's other builders or people in the home improvement space, or whether it's for our customers. But I also have met your wife and son and agree they're worth everything that you're doing to try to provide for them. They're just terrific. And I've got the same sort of, motivation for my family. My wife has been extremely supportive of me, always was as a college coach for a long time. And then, getting into this space, she was absolutely my rock. So really appreciate you bringing that up. I'm interested that the time at the Citadel, obviously, the military background, the discipline. What are some of the traits that you've kind of brought from, the Citadel, or maybe have helped you, in your career here?
I think the Citadel, it certainly teaches you a sense of right, or a sense of honor, a sense of integrity. But I don't believe you can go there and learn those things. I think that those are traits that are inspired, whether you're born with them or they're inspired early on. So while I had those traits, I think going into it, the Citadel certainly expanded on those and made me look inward, to really understand the power, truly in the power of having those traits. So, but really what it taught me was I'm capable of doing things I never thought I was before. I was certainly not prepared for that college when I walked in the doors. I lived within 2 miles of it my whole life, and there were things I had no idea that we had to do. I'll never forget, sitting in there in that classroom, one of the early days, and thinking, "Oh my God, what the hell have I gotten myself into?" But the shame of quitting and going home and having to face that was, way worse than anything they could do to me there. So, got in great shape, met some great friends. We had a lot of fun. I was the local guy, so I was the party house. I'll go ahead and say it. So we all hung out, and we are still friends to this day. We stay very close. We're actually, our 10-year reunion's coming up. Overall, I guess I didn't find anything new there. It just it helped me find things inside of me that I could do much better on. And that confidence gave me the confidence that you need in this business to get where I've gotten. So,
yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your role with the HBA. Obviously, you were part of me joining the Home Builders Association, the Hilton Head Area Home Builders Association. But tell me a little bit about your role and the role of the HBA in the area.
Sure. Yeah. So the Hilton Head Area Home Builders Association was probably the single most beneficial decision I ever made, was joining them. And I'm not a paid spokesperson. They do not pay me anything. I assure you of that. But, really, what attracted me personally to the group at first was a sense of networking, getting to know people in the area, coming from Charleston and having only been down here for like 8 months when I started my business. I didn't really have that network. And I recognized the need for it. So it's funny, I was actually at a building convention in Orlando, and I was standing in line to get a drink before dinner one night, and another member of the HBA turned around, saw my name tag, "Hey, you're from Bluffton." She was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to join the HBA." And I knew the moment I heard that, I was like, "Well, sure. Yeah, give me the info." And I think the next week I was a member of it. But, as far as my role with them, really, I'm just there for, I'm a builder director. So do I direct the builders as members, no, it's not quite like that. But I certainly have a seat at the table, and I make decisions that may impact the entire organization. And I bring a builder perspective from it to it, I guess. There's a lot of different other members and board members that have, come from, banking backgrounds and, real estate backgrounds and, different trades. I think one of the members is a lumber salesman for a local lumber company. So that's really what it is. And, we focus a lot, not only on the networking, but really what our focus on and what we really do is we help with the politics of the area. It's very important. If some of these municipalities had their way, they would turn construction off tomorrow, and not understand the consequences of that, but they would. So it's our mission and our job to kind of bring a common sense approach to some of this legislation. Some of these things we agree with them on. We do need to cut back on some of the things that builders are doing, and we need to ensure that we're preserving our community and the attitude of it and the cult and the character of it. It's very important. That's what brings people here in the first place. So, but at the same time, there's the too far. And I'm not going to get into what I think that is right now, but we're certainly making a difference. Without us, I don't think some things would have been voted on and passed that would be pretty bad for our business.
Well, one of the things that I think is so important for anybody who's in this space who may not be a member yet, but is either a contractor or a sub who's working, even for realtors, I think it's a great space to be involved. It's a chance to have someone who's an advocate for you. And you were that for me. I mean, even just in kind of, helping me understand a little bit of the politics about, things that go on with the different municipalities and what we need to really pay attention to. And knowing, like you, I come to this with a certain set of values and integrity, and I want to do things the right way. I mean, not just for my customers, but for me. I want to feel good about the work I do every day and that my company does. And so having a group that kind of, advocates for us, I think is really important. And I think the HBA does that.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I sleep like a log at night. If I'm stressing, it's certainly not over something that was questionable. So it's important to keep that as you get through your business. So.
Well, let's shift to your business for a little bit here. I've seen on your website the gallery of the work that you've done. Just absolutely beautiful homes, several in Okatee that you've built, and obviously there's nothing that goes in there that's not super high standards. I mean, that's right. Just beautiful development over there. Got some friends there, and every time I drive through there, I think, oh, what a beautiful, oh my gosh, another beautiful home.
Yes, yeah, they're all over there.
Yeah, so that is definitely a place where a rising tide lifts all ships. Tell us a little bit about, what you do. It looks like you do full builds, you do renovations, you maybe do outdoor spaces. So there's some variety to what you offer your clients.
Yeah, so we do have a wider variety, I would say, than most general contractors in my category. We don't have we have an ideal project, right? But it kind of depends on, it's all relative, right? So our preference, of course, is new construction and large scale remodels and in large additions. But we've been known to take bathroom and shower renos as well, because sometimes it keeps our guys busy. It's cash flow for the business. We're not making out like bandits or anything on them, but it's, it keeps the grease on the gears, right? Currently we've got we've really got a lot going on. I have a spreadsheet to keep track of it. I think that's the first time I've needed that since we started our business. So, good problems to have. But what our market, we capture a market that is underserved in this area. And, if you are looking to build kind of a middle of the road, what I call a move up home, you don't have a lot of options down here. And that is where I've captured the majority of my market. I don't have very many people walking to my office saying, hey, we want to build a $15 million home, and that's okay. Coming from a production background, I will be honest, that's not my comfort zone. That's not where that's not where I know I can deliver the best service that I have.
Right.
So, with that, we've had a lot of success. There's been a lot of lessons learned, and, we try to be as flexible as we can, but we're finding as we get through this that being kind of rigid in some of your policies is absolutely important. So, that's all to say that, anything construction, residential, we can do it. You want that $15 million home built, that's great. But if you have a $150,000 addition you're looking to do, we can do it.
Well, I remember one in particular that from your website. I believe it was Toscano, maybe in Port Royal. It was a major renovation and just some beautiful stuff that you did there. The exposed beams, the added, and obviously you poured a new footing, so you had a big new slab that you poured out there. That was a major addition. You had a nice wine display. I saw you had the pocketed doors, beautiful. Because I'm going to notice the windows and the doors, obviously. So
Sure.
beautiful interior doors that you did with that project. Tell us about some of the, your ability to kind of work with designers and architects, or just with the customer. And where does it start for you usually?
So, typically where it starts with me is I have a client calling me. That is typically the first interaction that I have with any of, future clients. It's rare that somebody will call me and say, hey, my uncle, my brother, my mother, whatever is looking to build a home. Here's their number. Now that does happen, of course, but typically the first interaction is with me. I mean, what that conversation looks like, it's a short phone call, maybe 5-10 minutes. And it's just basically talk and get an idea of what this person is looking to do. I would say it's probably, most of the time, people do not have plans. A lot of people just don't even know where to start with that process. A lot of people don't know what that process can cost. So that's another one.
Right.
So, from that point forward, I like to advise them. While, I don't have an in-house architect that's full time, I do have an architect that I have a partnership with that we give work back and forth. I work closely with my clients. He makes sure that he doesn't send them off to another builder or something like that, because that has happened in the past with early clients before I learned the lesson of having your own, right?
Well, I'm going to stop you for one quick second here. Has there ever been anybody who said, "Oh, that costs less than I thought"?
No, I don't think
It
so.
never does. It doesn't with windows either. It doesn't with doors.
Right. But yeah, so, we'll work with the architect. Obviously budget's important. At some point the conversation has to be had. Look, how much are you looking to spend? Like, what is your budget to build this home? And that will tell you everything you need to know kind of from the beginning. So, from there, we take that. I work with a designer. She works closely with me and my clients. I provide those services for my clients at no extra cost, because of the service and what she does for this business. I mean,
That's great. That's
it is
fantastic.
essential, truly essential, keeping those things organized and being able to help my clients make the right selections so they're not second guessing themselves. Things like that make a build go, very smoothly. I'm probably one of the few builders that you'll have that say, I truly enjoy working with interior designers. Are there some that maybe not? Sure. Sometimes it's two very ego driven, I guess, roles that we have in this build. And sometimes there's friction there. But
Sometimes, but
sometimes, really.
a good designer and a good builder together, when they're
Oh, it's a
working
power
together,
couple.
it's absolutely the most important thing. I've got great designers with our showroom. I'm going through that right now, and I've got a really good builder and a really good designer, and there are times when there's a little bit of friction, and they keep each
Sure.
other honest, and I love it. And what I love is that they're both serving me, both trying to look out for my interest. It may be something, and I'm sure this happens with you, where the builder says, "Hey, I can source something that's similar at this price. Like for me to do it." I've got a designer who's saying, "Hey, no, we went.
Yeah.
Remember, we went through that. We chose this because you wanted that look, right?
Right.
And this is a gap that we don't want to close. If we're going to need to save something, this isn't where we want to save." So I appreciate that, that's something that we all kind of go through.
Sure. It's tough for everybody. I think even for me and being a part of and, facilitating this process, I'm going through it now. I'm about to remodel my own home and I'm on the other side of it, kind of, in a way. And I'm second guessing myself sometimes. And I'm like, man, I know how much this frustrates me sometimes. And here I am.
That's why it's worth having a pro, someone who
Right.
knows what the finished product is going to look like, and it's not
Certainly.
you guessing. I mean, they really can help you see how they come together.
Certainly.
To me, it's a little bit like having a lot of great ingredients, but that doesn't mean that they all go in the same dish. And I think there's definitely an element of that. The designers come up with a recipe, and the builders are the chefs.
Right.
And
And, and as the chef, so to speak, we want our product to turn out looking nice as well to us, other people. I mean, I'm not going to say that everything has to appeal to everybody by any means, but these homes, these beautiful homes that I build, I want to show them off. I want to take pictures. I want these things to be, everywhere I can get in front of people with them. And having a shag carpet on the ceilings and, pink tile in the entryway to the home, that may not be something you necessarily want to show off. So
absolutely.
now if you want to do that, by all means, I can't stop you.
I know what you're saying. So tell me a little bit about, the difference between working on maybe a spec home and a custom home, or, what obviously a lot of what you do is very customized and directly with a client. Someone else might be in a situation where they're looking at a track home where they're just choosing the kind of finishes and what are the differences in that whole process? And obviously, they serve different needs. But for someone who's trying to make a decision about what's the best way to go to build a home.
Sure. And, from the standpoint of a builder between a spec and a custom home, I think that that's a conversation on its own. And I can get into that if you'd like. But, from a client standpoint of, hey, I want to, they've got three options in front of them in most markets, right? You want a track home, production home. You're looking to do a semi-custom home, which kind of blurs the lines between track and custom. And then, of course, you have custom. And really what it comes down to your budget and what you're looking to get out of your builder. And the freedom that you would like to have when making your selections. A lot of production builders, their margins are not nearly what some of these custom home builders are. So they have to be a lot more tactful in the management of their clients and getting their clients to the finish line and handing the keys over. So, in my experience in production, which, is, I think I know better than anything, because obviously I spent 10 years doing it. But my experience with that was, a lot of times people came in and, they wanted that custom level of selection, but they didn't quite have the budget for it.
Right.
And, sometimes that can be very frustrating for some people, and I totally get it. But any good production builder is going to understand that and try to take you through that and make this experience as good as it can be. That sounds a little cliche, it's like make your clients happy, have great customer service. But with something like a home, it's an emotion. It's such an emotional purchase. It truly is. I mean,
Right.
Rarely do you have a client coming in that's like, oh yeah, I don't care about this house. It's no big deal. Like you can just kind of do whatever you want. That never happens. When you're making those decisions, it comes to budget. Production builder, they're not going to allow you to go and do, outwardly custom things. You can't go and bring them a tile that you like. You have to select the tile that they offer.
Right.
And you have to select their floor plans. With a semi-custom builder, you may be able to bring your own plans in, but they may have a wider range of selections, but they're going to keep you in a box because that's just how that business model works. And then, of course, with a custom home, you've got a high level of freedom with your selections, and but that all comes with a cost. Of course.
Well, and the fact that you can work with a designer, with you, obviously makes that experience even better because it can be overwhelming, all the options, all the choices, and having somebody who can kind of steer you in the right direction, who can listen to you, figure out your taste, present you three or four different options that may be outside of that box that the solution offers you, right?
Yeah, and I believe at a
would
custom
be
level.
the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, I believe at a custom level, a designer is, for most people, a requirement. I mean, truly. And that's why I include it with my builds, because of how much of the service that they truly bring to the table with builds. It's because, yeah, like you said, I mean, you walk into a showroom, there's 10,000 options that looking at you. And, sometimes the faucet that you want is $6,000. Well, a designer is going to get to the bottom of why you like that faucet and maybe present you with some different options that will help. And it makes you a lot more sure in your selections, and that translates to a quicker build you get in your home.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question that I think will be great for our listeners, and that is, if you had 3 to 5 questions that you thought everybody should ask of somebody before they selected them as their contractor, as their builder, if you were giving advice to your sister or your mother who lived in a different area, because if your sister or your mother lived here, they would choose you. We know that, right? So they wouldn't even ask questions; they'd go with you. But if let's say they lived in the Midwest and you were giving advice on how to find a great builder, what would be the things that you would tell them to ask?
So I think the first thing, before you even got into the questioning, the first thing is to do a little bit of recon on your own. What is the quality like? What does this builder's quality look like? That is probably the number one thing that everybody thinks sets us apart as builders. But go visit their job sites, especially if you're in a neighborhood that's under construction, especially by a production home builder. They may want you to have a representative from the company join you on the job site, but that would be up to whoever was building. But just get an idea of what the quality looks like. What do their homes look like when nobody's watching them, right? Are they clean? They present themselves? And then once you feel good about that, your questions for your builder should be, in my opinion, should be focused around communication. Question one, how do you communicate, and do you have a regular schedule of communicating with your clients? B, do your superintendents communicate with clients directly? And three, I think that would be kind of getting an idea of the culture of the builder, I guess, right? Say, look at the person and say, hey, if I called your last 10 clients, how many of them would say negative things about you? You can BS that, sure. It's tough too. Sometimes you get a good idea just from communicating with them how they do. So
Right.
being able to communicate with your clients is key. If there's any builders listening to this and they're having issues with some of their clients, sometimes it may just be a communication breakdown. You may be saying one thing and they're hearing another. Sometimes it's better to switch up some of the ways that you're delivering this information, because at the end of the day, we can all say, oh, she didn't hear me, or he didn't understand me, and this is frustrating. When you move past that and you recognize maybe there's something I can do on my end differently, that's when things really start to click, I think, for me and me personally. So, communication, I guess, is the key.
Yeah. Yeah. You deal with all sorts of different communication types, different personalities. So setting some ground rules, being clear about expectations is kindness. That's a gift of love.
Absolutely.
You're letting them know how this is going to go smoothly when you do that. It's not putting restrictions on. It's actually, I don't know if I've told you this, but I went to seminary when I was younger, and one of the things that we talked about was the law was considered a gift, right, in the Old Testament especially. So these things weren't meant to put restrictions on people; they were meant to liberate people, to give them,
Absolutely.
things like don't build on the or not build, sorry, don't plant crops on the seventh year, was so that the soil could replenish, so you could have a more bountiful crop,
Right.
in perpetuity. So they were really meant to be things that were gifts. So, communication is so important. Tanner, who's my production manager, always says, people, it's okay with being disappointed. They just don't want to be surprised, right? So you
Sure.
can give bad news to them. You can tell them, hey, something didn't come in. Just tell them right away. Don't tell them after everything was supposed to be installed. Oh, yeah, that didn't come 2 weeks ago like we thought it would. And so keeping on top of communication, I think, is really important. What do you do to kind of make sure you're doing that for your customers?
So I think, educating my clients is, I would say, my task. The role that I play in this company and the interactions that I have with clients, a lot of times I'm educating them into the process of how this goes. Nobody was born doing this. I didn't know anything about it when I started working. And somebody coming in as a client, I would never in a million years expect them to know certain things about this industry. Setting expectations with them, in my opinion, is probably will help everybody in this journey that you're about to take. Your clients, your contractors, everybody in the process is going to benefit from your client understanding how you do business, what to expect during the commission of this business, and how to best be a good client. If they want their build to go quickly, the responsibility is on them at some of these stages. So delivering bad news fast is key. I think that's something that nobody likes to deliver bad news. Delivering that news fast so you can come up with a solution with the most amount of time you have available is going to benefit everybody as well.
Well, on the topic of communication, I love quotes, right? As a former coach, we had inspirational quotes, and so many of them seem to kind of cross between sports and things like, I would say, construction. One of my favorites that I used every season at the beginning of the year was Abe Lincoln said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 5 sharpening my axe. So that was something that I thought crossed over to, all sorts of applications. Measure twice, cut once. That's another great one. Is there
Sure.
anything that kind of an expression, mantra, something that you live by that's either part of the construction world or maybe outside of it?
I think there's one that I catch myself saying a lot, and this is more for the guys on my side of the transaction, and it
Sure.
is no good deed goes unpunished, and that is more and more true as I rise and we grow as a business. Making sure I'm telling my client not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. Because sometimes you think you're doing something nice for somebody, and it's going to turn around and shoot you in the foot. And you have to be so careful about that and the expectation that you're setting with your client. There's probably 100 different examples of that, but at the end of the day, as long as both people are honest with each other and nobody's trying to break this process for good or bad, I think that that would be important. And another one, this one's more for the client, but one I like is that there's the most expensive boat is a free boat. And the
That is
metaphor
so
there
true.
being, you kind of get what you pay for, right? It's obviously not advisable to go with the cheapest or, the cheapest guy, but you don't necessarily want to go the most expensive guy. Doing that research on the front end is so important. Having somebody that can be in your price point and, delivers the confidence that you need for your project. It may be like finding a unicorn, but for anybody thinking of doing a large scale project, it's going to make all the difference. I mean, these guys can come in and quite literally ruin your life. They will come in, destroy your kitchen, and disappear with your money or something horrible like that. So make sure you're paying for service and good
Right.
quality. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, what's no such thing as a free lunch, right? There's no
Sure.
such thing as a free addition on your house.
Right. Exactly. If somebody is telling you that, well, they're it's
Well,
just too good to be true.
or you're going to save so much money on your utility bills, it's going to pay for itself. Well, maybe over 30 years it might. I mean,
Right.
it's not going to in the first two, those kind of things. Yeah, I think those are great things. Tell me, a little bit about our business, is windows and doors. And for you, what are the things that are most important to you about how you select your window and door packages when you're doing a new build or when you're doing a reconstruction? What are the things that you look for, especially in this area where climate plays such a big part in those selections.
Yeah. So I work with quite a few different window brands. I like to have options at every price point, right? I like to have the good, the better, and the best. And a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients, really when windows are being discussed, that's a huge part of the budget. It's a large purchase. And I mean, as you know, Richard, the sky is the limit with windows, and you can spend a ton of money on them. But I like to say I'm a jack of all, master of none. I have a very good working knowledge of the different windows that I offer, the pros and cons of them, and how the companies handle their service side of things. I think that's important as well. But when I'm talking to a client, it's really to get understand what they want. Do you ever some people in a custom home, they've never even considered opening their windows. So
Right.
why would, if we're looking to maybe save a little bit of money, why won't go with fixed windows everywhere in the
There
home?
you go. Yeah.
I mean, bedrooms have to have an operable window, but it's things like that are what I really try to get to the bottom of. You don't want to go cheap on windows because, as you know, Richard, swapping them out is not cheap either. So
Yeah. You want to make sure you have something that's going to last. I think, you know, when you look at what we call builder grade, right? That's
yep,
where everybody's trying to get in, make their buck, get out. And
sure.
they're out quickly. They're not there when the window starts to fail after even just a few years, but on average 8 to 10.
Yeah, but there are some great entry level vinyl options out there
There are.
that work well and they're not going to fall apart on you. And there are some vinyl options out there that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Exactly.
So making sure my clients understand what they're getting is super important,
Yeah.
and pricing them appropriately.
Well, yeah, I think that's interesting because it's a big part of like our philosophy is that we want to be consumer advocates. We're not representing a window company. We're representing our customers to all of the window
Mm.
businesses that are out there. There are almost 2,000 window companies out there. I don't know if you
Really?
know that many. It's like
Holy
buying
cow.
boats, right? There's so many different boat brands out there. Everybody
Right.
thinks about cars like, we probably could name 25 car brands and run out of options. But when you get into windows, there are 2,000 different window manufacturers out there. And
Mhm.
definitely we know probably the top 5 or 6 from a marketing standpoint. That would
Mhm.
include your Andersons, Pellas, Marvins, those type of, companies. And they're great companies, great windows, but they're also heavily marketed to be more recognizable. There are a lot of smaller boutique windows out there that are absolutely on par, with quality, if not exceeding it, and lower
Certainly.
in price because they're not spending all the money on Super Bowl ads.
Right. Right.
But to have somebody who can go in and kind of say, "Hey, at your price point, at your level for the look that you're trying to get, let's do this." I'll give you a specific example. We carry Windsor, which is a really nice product. They were out of Iowa and they've actually opened a manufacturing plant in North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte now. which is great for us that they're so close. But they have a vinyl window that's built and looks just like their wood clad, that's a wood window with aluminum on the outside window. So you can do things like have the wood on the lower level in the common space, the kitchen, the living room, the family room. The second level, you might do vinyl.
Mhm.
That you're saving some money there. I mean, just there's so many options. I don't want to. This isn't about me. It's about you. I don't want to get off.
No, it's interesting. It's fascinating. Having Richard, having guys like you as a available, I should say, when I have my clients, it's like sometimes I have a client, they may come in and they are a nerd about Windows, and I say that in a complimentary way where they know a lot about Windows. They may know more about Windows than me, and they want my opinion. And
Yeah.
at some point, I love having the ability to say, you know what. I tell you what, how about we set up an appointment with Richard, and you can go through, he can get into all of the intricate details, these questions that you're asking. And
Yeah.
that is, I think a lot of guys, they miss that. They think that they need to be the expert. They need to know everything, and they
Too
have
much.
to. It is, it would be impossible for me to be an expert in all fields home construction. We're using those resources. It is key. And I think it shows to your client, like, this guy's the real deal. He's not, the people that are installing and supplying his materials are experts in the field that they're in.
Well, and I know you're going to back me up on this. The most important thing isn't about the materials, but it's about the installation. If you don't have really good people installing it, it doesn't matter how good the product is. You can take a great window, you can take a great door, you can take great flooring, great siding. It doesn't matter. You name it, great roofing. If you don't have the right people putting it in the right way, it fails.
Absolutely.
And so you've got to make sure you're doing that. I've got one more question for you here, just a general question. Is there anything that you want to share with people about the market, the building climate, things that we're in right now, or maybe advice to somebody who is young and trying to break through, maybe who's kind of sitting there saying, hey, I want to do what Cameron's done. I'm ready to start my own business. Maybe some information or advice for them.
Sure. Yeah. So, when we're as a member of the HBA, I came to know the ACE school, which is a trade school. Juniors and seniors in high school, they're looking to go into the trades, and it's a focused education for them to do that. And I got asked the same question of, what advice would you give? And I think the first thing I would say is owning a business is not for everybody. It's some people, they love what they do. They love not having the stress of, am I going to be business or, jobless tomorrow? They like having that stability. But for those that are looking to get into business for themselves, I mean, you have to be a self-starter, period. I mean, that's the first thing, and if you can't wake up in the morning and start your day without having your boss call you to remind you, hey, here's what we need to do today, then you're not going to get very far in this world. But, having that motivation, having goals, having achievable goals for yourself, I think is so important, because when you're early on in this, I mean, we get kicked in the teeth to this day. I mean, we are still learning, things and how to, run our business better and build homes better. But being able to take those licks, so to speak, and recognize what you did wrong, taking accountability for that, and not saying, oh, Mrs. Smith, she's just really annoying and she bugs me and she doesn't know what she's talking about. Really getting to the bottom of what happened, why it happened, and what you can do to change that outcome. And then, like I said, going back to having goals, there's no better feeling than achieving a goal. And for me, and just my mindset, it's like, once I get to that goal, I look around and I'm like, well, that was good. So what's next? There's several goals in my life, and my wife and I got married. That was an incredible moment for me, and I felt like I was on top of the world. And then, she had my son. That was another goal. But there are professional goals that I've hit as well. When we signed our first contract for a new home construction job, me and my wife, it was a very powerful moment for us, because it was happening, right? Like, we had done this, we were going to do this, and we were going to succeed. And, achieving those goals, finishing my first custom home, there's so many things that you have to set for yourself and recognize that are stepping stones that are necessary to get to where you want to be. Having those little goals and getting those little bits of satisfaction along the way will keep you motivated and keep you striving towards, the ultimate. So staying motivated, being self-motivated, and having good people, I think, is key. You are who, what's the saying? A birds of a feather flock together, right? You are the company you keep. I think I like quotes too. I might not know it yet. But, that's just so important. It's early on in your early days and all, who you hang out with is who that's the person that you're gonna, fork to the world. So anyway, that was a long, kind of a long drawn
No,
out explanation, but
hey, it's
I think
great.
that those are traits that are key.
Listen, I know that you have integrity, and that's what really matters, because things do go wrong in construction. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And who are you working with? Is it someone who's going to make it right? Is someone's going to be there? Is someone who's going to answer the phone? I mean,
Absolutely.
I tell you, that's one thing that I tell people all the time. If they're hard to reach before, when you're trying to offer them money, think how hard they're going to be to reach when when
Right. Yeah,
when you got a problem, right?
exactly.
But listen, if you're somebody who's new in this space and you're looking for maybe a mentor, someone who you can, ask for advice, someone who can point you the right direction with the Home Builders Association, I encourage you to reach out to Cameron. If you are somebody who's looking for a builder, I absolutely encourage you to reach out to Cameron and make sure that he's one of your bids. I encourage everybody, just like in our space, to get multiple bids, to talk to other people. Don't assume anything's true. Validate it for yourself. But I'm telling you, this guy, he's the real deal. And I hope that you'll give him a chance. So he'll earn your business. Cameron, tell everybody where they can find you, your website, your phone number, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so my website, it is at the time of recording this, it is under some updates, so it's not quite where I'd want it to be. But my website is www.hackettbuilds.com. Hackett is how you spell Hackett, and you can kind of get a good idea of who we are. From there, we're eventually going to have some meet the team and some different features that we're going to update. But and then my phone number is 843-209-5621. And if you are looking to build, you have questions. If you're looking to build in 2 years and you have some questions of what can I do now, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. But sometimes reaching out via my website may be the best way to reach me. Just my phone rings off the hook. So I may not be able to stop and
You're
take
on
the
the
phone.
job.
Yes, absolutely. So, but yeah, like I said, I believe that educating my client is something that I enjoy doing. It is so important. It helps my job. It helps me do my job and helps my client have a better experience if they know what to expect and know what's coming next.
Yeah, great. Well, listen, Cameron, thank you so much, and thanks for everybody for listening. The home improvement is definitely going to be something that we're all trying to do here. We've got good people who are in this space, and bringing everybody together and talking about our values and talking about how we can add to the community is really going to be an important part of the shows. Cameron, thank you for being our first guest.
Thank you, Richard.